You open your eyes, and the world greets you with soft morning light that spills in uneven stripes across the floor. The air smells faintly of straw and wood smoke, and the boards beneath you creak as though they've been whispering secrets all night. Somewhere outside, a cart rattles over cobblestones, and a chicken sounds mildly offended about something. This is a world without mirrors. You have never seen your own face, except perhaps as a wavering shadow in a pond or the distorted gleam of polished bronze. You know what you feel like, but not what you look like. It's an odd kind of freedom. You are spared the morning ritual of checking if your hair has decided to stage a rebellion. Instead, you just hope for the best. You sit up, pulling a rough wool blanket around your shoulders, the kind that feels like it was woven directly from a particularly stubborn sheep. You hear the familiar scrape of a neighbor's door. That sound means bread is already baking in someone's oven, and the smell will start drifting over soon. Life here runs on rhythms you didn't invent and can't control, like sunrise or the gossip of the women at the communal well. Historians say polished metal served as the main mirror for much of human history. They also say it was so blurry and warped that it probably told more lies than truths, which might explain why self-confidence in your century comes not from symmetry or flawless skin, but from how well you can hold a conversation without accidentally insulting someone's cousin. You step outside. The ground is damp from last night's rain, and the air is that fresh, unbothered smell of the day that hasn't been ruined yet. A dog ambles past, glances at you, and decides you're not important enough to bark at. Somewhere in the distance, a church bell rings slow, deliberate notes, as if even time itself is in no rush. You walk toward the well. The wooden bucket creaks as you lower it into the water, and you catch a glimpse of your reflection, a pale, shifting blur. You can't tell if you're smiling or just squinting against the morning sun. In a world without mirrors, your face is a rumor told back to you by others. Some people swear you have kind eyes. Others insist they're sharp in a way that suggests you're secretly judging everyone. Maybe both are true. You probably won't make it through this day without someone commenting on the mud on your hem. People notice things here, not because they're nosy, although they are, but because faces aren't the primary way to measure someone. Your posture, the tilt of your head, the speed of your walk, those are the real introductions. If you're new here, or new to my little corner of storytelling, this is the kind of pace we keep. No rush, no dizzying list of battles or kings, unless they wander into the street and trip over a chicken. If you enjoy falling asleep to slow tales like this, you might gently press that little subscribe button, and maybe leave a comment telling me where you are and what time it is there. I like to imagine these words drifting across time zones like low clouds. Now let's ease into tonight's journey. You walk through the market, where the air hums with the low murmur of bargaining. Piles of onions gleam like polished stones. Fish lie on wooden boards with expressions that suggest mild regret. A girl selling ribbons waves at you, though ribbons here aren't meant for tying back your hair to look in a mirror, but for showing others a splash of color that says, "Yes, I'm alive, and I'm feeling pink today." One man in the market, a tinsmith with soot on his hands, claims to make the finest polished plate mirrors for wealthy clients. You've never seen one in person, but you've heard that if you stand still and squint, they can show a version of you that is almost convincing. Almost. Of course. Historians still debate whether these objects were common enough for ordinary people to own, or they were as rare as polite arguments in the alehouse. By the time the sun climbs higher, the morning crowd begins to thin. You pass a group of children chasing a hoop down the street. One boy looks up, gives you an exaggerated bow, and runs on. Your image is reflected back at you not in glass, but in the way people react to you, a constantly shifting mirror made of glances and gestures. And for now, that's enough. By midday, the town feels drowsy. The stalls in the market look a little tired too, as though they've been up since before dawn, which they have. You weave between them, the boards creaking under your steps, and the smell of baking bread finally reaches you in a warm, yeasty wave. Somewhere behind you, a woman is loudly telling the story of how she caught her husband talking to that widow from Hill. You hear the widow cough politely nearby. You carry a small loaf wrapped in cloth. The baker didn't look at you long when he handed it over. Maybe because eye contact here isn't the awkward, lingering thing it will become in a mirror-filled future. Instead, people's eyes dart to your clothes, your hands, the little details that signal who you are without ever showing your reflection. You wander toward the river. The path is narrow, lined with low stone walls that crumble into mossy heaps in places. The air hums with summer insects, and every so often you hear the splash of a fish. You kneel at the edge of the water, letting your fingers trail through it. The surface wavers with green and gold light, and you catch your reflection for a moment. Then it shatters into ripples. You think you see your mouth move, but maybe that's just the water making things up. One major historical fact for you. Before the widespread use of glass mirrors in Europe around the 14th century, most ordinary people lived their entire lives without seeing a clear image of themselves. And yet, self-image still existed. It was simply built from the stories others told you about yourself. A compliment could linger in your mind for years, shaping the way you walked, even if it came from someone who had jam in their teeth at the time. You head back up the path, passing a shepherd leaning on his crook. His flock grazes lazily, unbothered by the heat. He nods to you, squinting in the sun, and says you look sturdy today. You're not entirely sure what that means, but it's probably a compliment. This is the kind of feedback you get instead of, your hair looks nice, which is refreshing, though possibly less informative. As you reach the outskirts of town, you pass an inn where travelers are gathered outside, swapping stories. One woman brags about a city far away where the market stalls have bronze mirrors as big as shields. She says you can see yourself so clearly that you'll start fixing your hair without thinking. The man beside her snorts and says those mirrors make everyone look fatter. Historians still debate whether this is true, or if it's just an early example of people blaming the tools instead of the user. Inside the inn, the air is cooler, shaded from the sun. You hear the clink of mugs and the low hum of voices. A serving boy passes with a tray of ale, moving carefully, as if carrying gold. In the corner, a lute player strums a tune that sounds both cheerful and slightly resigned, like someone who's realized the song will outlast them. You sit by the window, breaking off pieces of your bread. Outside, a group of girls are braiding each other's hair, laughing at some private joke. They don't need mirrors. They have each other's hands, the occasional teasing remark, and the satisfaction of feeling a braid tighten under practiced fingers. There's a kind of peace here in not constantly knowing exactly what you look like. You imagine future centuries filled with reflective glass and perfect lighting, and you wonder if people will miss the mystery. A fly lands on your table. You wave it away lazily, feeling the weight of the afternoon settle in. Somewhere outside, a cartwheel hits a rut, and the whole street echoes with the sound. Life without mirrors has its inconveniences, but also has this: moments where the only reflection you need is the one in someone else's smile. You take another bite of bread and lean back, letting the days slow even further, the way it always seems to in summer. Somewhere in the room, someone tells a joke you can't quite hear, and the laughter drifts toward you like warm air. And outside, the river keeps flowing, carrying away the little fragments of your reflection, scattering them into the distance. The afternoon wears on, and the sunlight slants low enough to turn the dust in the street into a drifting gold haze. You leave the inn with the slow deliberation of someone who knows there's no such thing as being late here, just arriving eventually. The street is quieter now. Most people have retreated indoors, and those who remain move in that lazy, purposeful way of cats who decided to go somewhere but can't remember why. You wander back toward the market, though by now it's more an empty stage than a bustling scene. A few traders are still packing away their goods, muttering to themselves about who bought too little or who still owes them money from last week. One man is polishing a small bronze disc, holding it up to catch the last of the sunlight. He doesn't notice you watching, so you take your time. In the shifting light, the disc gleams, and for a moment you think you see yourself, but it's nothing like the you that exists in your mind. The nose seems too long, the cheeks too wide. Or maybe the bronze is telling the truth, and your imagination has been the liar all along. Here's a peculiar little fact. In some ancient cultures, especially in the absence of clear mirrors, people relied heavily on friends, family, and even strangers to check their appearance. Imagine walking down the street and being casually informed that your tunic is crooked or your hair is trying to escape. It's less an insult and more like public service. You sit on the edge of the fountain, in the center of the square. The water moves lazily, and someone has tossed flower petals into it. As you watch them drift, you hear footsteps approach. Two young men, still deep in an argument about whether the moon is just a reflection of the sun or its own mysterious lantern. Historians still debate how widespread certain astronomical beliefs were, but what's clear is that debating them in public squares was practically a sport. One of the men glances your way and frowns thoughtfully. "You've got something in your hair," he says, gesturing vaguely. Without a mirror, you can only guess what he means. A petal from the fountain? A stubborn piece of straw from your blanket this morning? You thank him anyway and resist the urge to start patting your head like a startled bird. As the sun dips lower, you decide to take the long way home. The path leads you through narrow lanes where laundry hangs between windows, swaying gently. Every so often you catch the scent of cooking, stew, bread, something roasted. You pass a boy leaning against the wall, idly carving a piece of wood into the shape of a spoon. He nods at you with the solemnity of someone who has nothing urgent to do and all day to do it. By the time you reach your door, the sky is already slipping into the deep blue of evening. The hearth inside your home glows faintly, waiting to be coaxed back to life. You strike a flint, feed the embers, and soon the small room is filled with a familiar, forgiving warmth of firelight. It casts shadows that dance along the walls, shifting your features into countless versions of yourself, none of which will ever hold still long enough to be truly known. You sit down, pull your blanket over your shoulders, and listen to the faint hum of the street outside. Somewhere a lute plays again, perhaps the same musician from the inn, following the evening wherever it goes. You wonder if anyone else is looking into the bronze disc right now, try to find themselves in its warped glow, and thinking, as you do, that maybe it's better not to know exactly. Night falls with the slow grace of a curtain being drawn. The air cools, and the sounds of the day fade into a softer murmur. You step outside again, drawn by the quiet. The moon hangs low over the rooftops, and in its light, every surface takes on a silvery sheen. Even puddles in the street become little shimmering windows, distorted, but still inviting enough to lean over. You peer into one, and there it is again, that elusive, watery you. The ripples blur your features, making you look like a character from a dream you only half remember. In a world without mirrors, this is as close as you'll get to certainty. And even then, the wind can erase you with a sigh. Down the lane, a group of neighbors gather near a small fire. They're roasting chestnuts and swapping news, though it's hard to tell where truth ends and embellishment begins. You wander over, drawn by the warmth and the low laughter. Someone hands you a chestnut, still hot, the skin peeling back to reveal the soft, sweet inside. You bite into it, and for a moment the taste fills your entire world. A man at the fire tells a story about a traveling merchant who carried a large silver mirror on his back, offering people the chance to see themselves for a single coin. According to him, half the town lined up, only to walk away muttering that they'd expected something different. The merchant left the next morning, pockets full, leaving behind a trail of confused self-perceptions. Historians still debate whether such mirror peddlers truly existed, or if they're just another fireside tale meant to entertain. You sit there for a while, letting the conversation wash over you. One woman is describing her daughter's upcoming wedding, already imagining the braid of her hair, the color of her gown. She won't see herself in a mirror on that day. She'll rely entirely on the hands and eyes of others to shape her beauty. And somehow, that feels more intimate. As the fire burns lower, you head back toward home. The street is nearly empty now, the only sound the soft drip of water from the eaves. You pass the fountain again, the petals from earlier still floating, their colors muted in the moonlight. Inside, you set another log on a fire and settle into your bed. The blanket is heavy, and the air smells faintly of wood smoke. You close your eyes, imagining the bronze disc in the market, the puddle in the street, the faint rippling you in the river. None of them told the whole truth, but perhaps they didn't need to. Somewhere outside, a dog barks once, then thinks better of it. The world quiets, and in the dim firelight, you drift toward sleep, carrying only the vaguest outline of your own face, and somehow that feels enough. Morning again. The pale light leaks through the shutters, and the air carries that faint chill that suggests it rains sometime in the night. You stretch under the blanket, hearing your joints complain like old friends who love you but want you to know they've been inconvenienced. Outside, the world hasn't yet found its voice, only the quiet clink of a milk pail and the distant call of a crow breaking the stillness. You push the door open and step into the cool damp. The street is slick, cobblestones darkened by rain. There's a smell of wet earth and damp wool, the sort of scent that makes you feel like the day hasn't quite decided what it wants to be. Somewhere nearby, a baker's oven breathes out a low, steady warmth, and the promise of bread lingers in the air. The well is your first stop. The wooden handle is slick under your hand, and the rope feels swollen from the rain. As the bucket sinks into the water, you lean over the rim, and there's your reflection again, faint and trembling. In this early light, it's more suggestion than an image, like the memory of a dream. You smile at it, or think you do, and the movement sends ripples across the surface, scattering to you that was into nothing. Here's today's historical truth. In medieval towns, polished metal and still water weren't just practical tools for seeing yourself. They were also part of daily chores. Drawing water, polishing a pot, or even handling a well-kept shield could offer fleeting glimpses of your face. It wasn't vanity. It was simply impossible not to notice. A neighbor passes by, balancing a basket on her hip. She glances at you and says, "Your hood's on sideways," in that friendly but not really negotiable tone. You adjust it, not entirely sure what sideways means without a mirror, but grateful for correction anyway. You take the path that winds toward the fields, just to watch the morning take shape. The grass sparkles with dew, and each step leaves a dark print in the wet earth. A farmer is already out, turning the soil with deliberate movements. He waves, then shouts something about the clouds looking suspicious. You glance up and decide he's probably right. Along the edge of the field, a group of children play a game that involves tossing stones into a shallow puddle. The ripples erase each reflection almost as soon as it appears, and they shriek with delight every time one of them manages to drown another's face. You can't help smiling. Some things never change, like the joy of interrupting someone else's moment of self-importance. The clouds thicken, muting the light, and the first drops of new rain start to fall. You pull your hood forward, hoping it's straight this time, and turn back toward the safety of walls and hearths. By the time you reach your door, the street is shining again, the puddles are growing, more mirrors today, waiting to catch anyone who leans too close. You step inside, set down the water bucket, and listen to the rain tapping steadily on the roof. In the dim light of the room, the fire crackles back to life, casting those long, familiar shadows on the walls. The ones that make you look taller, leaner, or sometimes slightly monstrous, depending on where you sit. And you think, not for the first time, that maybe shadows are the most honest mirrors of all. By midday, the rain has eased into a mist, so fine it feels like you're walking to the breath of the town itself. The air is damp, clinging to your skin and hair, and everything you touch feels cool. You wander toward the market again, partly for supplies, partly for the quiet companionship of people pretending they're there on serious business. The stalls look different under the mist. Bright fabrics are muted now. Spices seem darker, and the fish glisten like they've just been caught, even if they were here yesterday. A seller of combs calls out to you, waving a carved wooden one. "Keeps your hair neat without ever seeing it," he says with a grin. You don't buy it, but you admire the pitch. Here's your obscure tidbit for today. In some rural communities, before mirrors were common, people used a touch of their hands and descriptions from trusted friends to style themselves for important occasions. It wasn't unusual for someone to be told, "You look wonderful," and have absolutely no personal confirmation of the fact. There's a certain faith in that, a quiet surrender to the idea that beauty is a communal project. You pass a basket maker arranging his wares, each one glistening with rain. He doesn't look up as you walk by, but you notice how the puddle near his feet holds his image perfectly still, like a coin at the bottom of a clear fountain. The sight makes you think again about how the world offers reflections whether you ask for them or not. Further along, two women are arguing, lightheartedly, about whether a certain shade of dye makes one look pale or seriously ill. Without mirrors, the answer seems to depend entirely on who you ask. Historians still debate whether this reliance on others' opinions made people more socially aware or just more stubborn in defending their choices. You pause by a food stall and buy a handful of roasted nuts. They're warm against your palm, and the smell is rich and earthy. You eat them slowly, watching the mist drift between the roofs like a quiet, patient ghost. Somewhere behind you, a horse snorts, and the sharp clop of hooves echoes briefly before fading. When the mist finally thins, the light feels warmer, and you start back toward home. On the way, you pass the fountain, yes, the same one from yesterday. The petals are gone now, replaced by the faint shimmer of coins at the bottom. You think about tossing one in, maybe making a wish to see yourself clearly just once. But then you decide against it. Some mysteries, you suspect, are worth keeping. Inside your home, you place the nuts on the table, wrap yourself in your blanket, and sit by the window. The glass isn't polished enough to reflect anything but a vague, shifting outline, but that's fine. You watch the street instead, the people moving through it like figures in a slow dance, each one reflected only in the eyes of someone else. And maybe that's the most accurate mirror of all. The next morning comes with a pale, amber light that seeps through the shutters like honey through cloth, slow and deliberate. You wake to the smell of bread again, though this time it's mingled with the faint tang of smoke from someone's hearth gone a little too ambitious. The street outside is already alive. Soft footfalls, the muted thud of barrels being rolled, and the occasional bray of a donkey who clearly believes there's urgent news to share. You step out into the crisp air and decide to walk in the opposite direction from your usual route. The town feels different when you take unfamiliar streets, more mysterious, like a book you've owned for years but never read all the way through. Here, the buildings lean a little closer together, their upper stories almost touching, as if gossiping over the heads of passers-by. Laundry hangs between them, flapping gently, each piece telling a story about the person who wears it. At a corner, you find a small shop selling metal goods, hinges, buckles, candlesticks, and, tucked among them, a handful of polished copper plates. They catch the morning light and throw it back in broad, golden blurs. You pick one up, holding at an angle. There you are again, or at least someone shaped vaguely like you. Your cheeks look fuller in this copper world, your eyes darker. Is that really you? Or is the plate trying to flatter you, like an old friend with questionable taste? Historical fact of the day. In many places, copper and bronze mirrors were prized possessions, kept wrapped in cloth to protect them. The wealthy might have one in their household, but most people made do with borrowed glimpses. A merchant could carry one from town to town and instantly become the center of curiosity. The shopkeeper, a man with a nose like a hawk's beak, watches you with mild amusement. Fine likeness, isn't it? He says, though it's unclear whether he's joking. You set the plate down, deciding that if you're going to believe in a version of your face, it should probably be one you imagine for yourself. Leaving the shop, you follow the street until it opens into a small square you've never seen before. There's a single bench under an elm tree, its branches trailing like lazy arms. An elderly woman sits there, mending a shirt. She glances up, studies you for a moment, then says, "You've got your father's brow." You've heard that before from others, but without a mirror, the phrase remains both comforting and strange, like a gift you can't quite unwrap. You linger in the square, watching pigeons argue over crumbs, until the shadows grow longer. Then you wander back through streets that now feel slightly more familiar. Home waits, warm and quiet, and as you settle by the fire, you catch yourself thinking about that copper plate, and how it was less a mirror and more a polite suggestion. Evening settles in like a quilt being drawn over the town. The air cools quickly, carrying the faint smell of rain yet to come. You decide to take a short walk before night swallows the last of the light. The streets are quieter now, lanterns begin to glow in doorways, each one a small island of gold in the growing blue. You pass the fountain, yes, that one again. Tonight, the water reflects a lantern light in scattered shards, making the surface look like it's been sprinkled with broken stars. You lean over, curious, but your own reflection is barely there, swallowed by the movement of the water. At the far end of the street, a group has gathered outside the alehouse. They're passing around a small, polished disc, silver by the look of it, and laughing at the faces they see in it. You pause just far enough away to watch without joining. Each person holds it for only a moment, squinting, tilting it, adjusting their expression, as if they could change the truth before handing it over. Here's your cultural oddity. In some towns, the arrival of a traveler with a fine mirror was an event. People would pay in coins, food, or even gossip just for the chance to see themselves, sometimes for the first time in years. And yet, afterward, many claimed they preferred not knowing exactly. The idea of their face had been kinder than the reflection. A man from a group notices you lingering and waves a disc in your direction. You shake your head with a smile, pretending you've somewhere urgent to be, though your only destination is a bench under a tree. You sit there, listening to the distant laughter and wondering whether they'll remember the faces they saw, or the images will fade like smoke. The night deepens, the moon climbing higher. Somewhere nearby, a cat pads silently along a wall, pausing only to regard you with the cool detachment cats have perfected over centuries. In its eyes, you probably look the same as you always do, another human taking up space in its kingdom. You head home slowly, the lanterns guiding you like breadcrumbs. Inside, the fire's warmth greets you instantly, wrapping around your shoulders like an old friend. You sit for a while, staring into the flames. They flicker and shift, reshaping your face into 100 brief strangers. You can't hold on to any of them, and maybe that's the point. Somewhere outside, the laughter fades, replaced by the soft hush of the wind moving through the narrow streets. You close your eyes, carrying the sounds of the evening with you into the quiet. Morning drifts in slowly, as if the sun is still negotiating with clouds about whether today is worth showing up for. You rise to the muffled sound of boots on cobblestone, someone already hauling goods toward the market. The air is damp again, thick with the smell of rain-soaked wood. You decide to follow the sound of those boots, walking through streets that glisten in the early light. The market is half awake when you arrive. Some stalls are open, others still swaddled in cloth. The owners yawning behind them. A potter is arranging his wares, wide bowls, narrow jugs, and one particularly shiny vessel that catches your attention. You lean over, peering into its curved side. Your reflection stares back, elongated, narrowed, as if you've been stretched like dough. It's not a flattering look, but it is undeniably you in some strange, alien way. The potter chuckles. Best not to drink from that one unless you want to see yourself twice, he says. You imagine the disconcerting experience of sipping water and catching glimpses of your own distorted mouth. And you quietly agree. Here's a historical nugget. In the absence of clear mirrors, certain household objects, polished kettles, glazed pottery, even darkened windows, served double duty as accidental reflectors. These glimpses weren't consistent, but they were enough to spark curiosity or occasionally mild horror. You buy a small mug from the potter, not because you need it, but because his laughter felt like payment enough. Carrying it, you wander toward the edge of town where the road opens into fields. The wind smells of wet grass, and the distant hills look like they're wearing a soft haze for warmth. A shepherd passes, his flock following lazily. He greets you without slowing, calling you the one who walks without looking down. You wonder if that's a compliment or a gentle warning about tripping hazards. Either way, it's oddly satisfying to be known for something other than your appearance. By midday, you're back in the market, which is now fully awakened. The smell of roasting meat mingles with the sharper scent of vinegar from the pickle seller's stall. You pass a group of women discussing the arrival of a traveling musician. Apparently, he has a mirror strapped to his cart for tuning, though they hint it might serve other purposes. You make a mental note to investigate. On the walk home, you pass a puddle so still it could be mistaken for stone. You look down, and there you are again, sharper than usual. It's fleeting, though. One gust of wind, and the image is gone. You carry that glimpse with you, unsure if it's truer than all the others or just another passing suggestion. That evening, the air is restless. The wind snakes through the streets, carrying with it scraps of conversation, the smell of bread, and the faint metallic tang of the blacksmith's forge. You step outside, curious about the stir in the air, and hear music drifting from the far end of town. You follow it, past shuttered windows and doorways lit by small lamps. The sound leads you to a gathering near the green, a circle of people around a man with a lute. Beside him, strapped awkwardly to his cart, is the rumored mirror. It's framed in simple wood, the glass, or what passes for it, catching the firelight. The crowd takes turns peering into it. Each person's reaction is different. Some laugh, some frown. A few step back as though they've seen a stranger staring out at them. You edge closer until you can see the surface clearly. The glass is imperfect, wavy, bending the light in strange ways. Your reflection swims in it, shifting when you tilt your head. Cultural tidbit for tonight. Early glass mirrors, before industrial polishing techniques, often gave warped or tinted images. This meant that seeing yourself was always tinged with doubt. Was that curve in your jaw real? Was your skin truly that pale? Or was the mirror lying in some small, unprovable way? The musician notices your curiosity and grins. Careful, he says, you might not like the company. You glance once more before stepping back, unsure if you've learned anything about yourself at all. The music resumes, soft, winding melodies that seem to weave into the cool night air. Someone passes you a cup of ale, and you sip it slowly, watching the flames of the central fire dance. In the shifting light, every face looks a little unfamiliar, even the ones you know well. Historians still debate whether gatherings like this were common in smaller towns, or more a luxury of market days and fairs. But here, now, it feels as natural as the moon climbing higher above you. When you finally head home, the streets are nearly empty. You carry the faint echo of the music with you, along with the unsettled thought that maybe you prefer the water's version of your face, the one that moves and changes, never fully fixed. Inside, the fire is low, but the room feels warm enough. You wrap yourself in the blanket and sit quietly, letting the night settle.